Throughout the night, in conditions of murderous chaos, British UN troops have been trying to prevent a massacre. 9 warrior armoured vehicles were sent to the scene of the attack, where earlier a small UN force had witnessed the Croatian soldiers stop the convoy.
The soldiers then started to take people from the vehicles, initially the drivers, and taking them around the backs of the vehicles. Obviously we couldn't see from that stage what was going on. However, we heard shots later and had seen bodies being dragged across the road. Once that happened, we was, at the start stage, given permission to fire on those as the convoy has come under our jurisdiction. However, we couldn't fire for the amount of women and children actually on the road and in front of the HVO soldiers.
The violence yesterday evening was wholly predictable. Croats, wild with anger after recent military defeats, had an easy target. They could vent their anger on the drivers of a Muslim convoy which had come straight into a Croat area, apparently unaware of the certainty that it would be stopped, and worse. The UN troops fired warning shots last night, but they were a wholly inadequate force to do the job of saving lives. These events will add to the pressure on UN troops in central Bosnia. They are a force already severely stretched. In the last few minutes, we've seen some of the convoy arrive in Vitez, but not all of it. There is the sound of gunfire and no clear indication of what is happening. Justin Webb, BBC News, Vitez, Bosnia. This was a wholly predictable disaster. It began when the Muslim convoy was stopped by Croat women at a checkpoint near Novi Travnik. A peaceful protest quickly turned ugly and then descended into brutality, with Croat soldiers herding drivers off the vehicles. One lorry was hijacked and then the shooting began. We could not tell who was being hit, but the Muslim drivers were plainly in great danger, and tonight UN sources are talking of reports of deaths. British UN soldiers who were monitoring events looked on in horror. This is happening under the eyes of the UN, but under their present mandate, they say there's nothing they can do to stop it. Eventually, a warrior armoured vehicle did fire warning shots. But it was not enough to prevent the violence. The UN had warned the convoy leaders that they would be in danger here, but the convoy had come anyway, apparently failing to grasp the fact that so much hatred has blown up between Croats and Muslims in this area that they could not have expected to pass. So this evening, British UN troops are once again involved in picking up the pieces after a calamity. Justin Webb, BBC News, Vitez, Bosnia. The Muslim convoy drivers realized this morning, far too late, that they had been on something approaching a suicide mission. When the order came to restart their vehicles, it was decided that they should press on further into Croat territory, a decision which would lead inevitably to deeper disaster. The Croat population were as determined as ever that the convoy would not pass. It was split up, with some vehicles getting away, some being taken to a nearby quarry, and others attacked where they stood. There was certainly one death in this morning's attacks. There may well have been more. Many of the lorries have been looted, and the aid spread around Vitez. Men, women and children all joining in with the theft of provisions which were intended for refugees in Tuzlu. Throughout the